the work still has to get done, but there's something about like following play and finding that moment of bliss that unlocks capacity, right? That allows me to return back with a smile, and my work never feels like a duty as a result of it. My work never feels like an obligation that I have to perform so that I can sustain my level of life. That's a prison that I have fought long and hard to crawl out of.
On this episode, we continue our conversation with Caleb Campbell, an NFL linebacker, West Point graduate, Army officer, a dad. He does it all, but a phenomenal guy. And on this episode, we're actually going to be diving a little bit deeper into what Caleb recognizes as his methods and means by which he maintains his high level achievement after he's gone through this journey of awareness, of recognizing himself and being able to love himself a little bit more. A little preview, a little sneak peek. He talks about this idea of chasing joy. And then he shares another way in which he is making sure that he can continue his high level of achievement and also being appreciative of all the things that he has in his life. So follow along and listen in as we talk to Caleb Campbell. One of the things you touched on, Caleb, that I think is really important for us to continue the conversation on is this idea of, you know, you come up to this certain level of capacity, right? You're high achieving, and then you hit a place where I think what you said was so powerful that you don't feel safe there anymore because you just haven't conceptualized how this is your normal, or this is something that you can sustain, or this is something that you can maintain. And so your body is constantly fighting to sustain it or to keep it, as opposed to if this is just something that you've always been used to, then it's not in a place where you're out of whack or out of chaos. And you mentioned this idea of the nervous system. I think it's so important that people continue to realign with their physiological selves. We think too much and we forget that we are more than just our thoughts, right? We're all the things combined in us. But you talk about this idea of capacity, and I want to bring up, you post on LinkedIn, and I thought it was really powerful, and I'd like to share it here for just a second if you're okay with it. It's you mentioned this idea of during the season of your life, you were spending so much of your energy trying to hold on to this idea of the man you thought you were supposed to be. And then you mentioned that you didn't have the bandwidth to emotionally commit in a way that you needed to create a barrier between you and the full potential on the field and in the locker room. And I'm paraphrasing here from your LinkedIn people. I definitely support people going on your LinkedIn and checking it out. But one of the things that you said in there that I wanted to quote, which I thought was really powerful. Looking back, it is so clear to me that I didn't have a performance issue. I had a capacity issue. And that's kind of what you're touching on here. Would you say? Yeah, absolutely. I think I on that post, I was referencing Gallup or someone had come out and they redefined the definition of employee engagement. Right. And I think with employee engagement, the way they redefined it was something along the lines like the emotional commitment an individual can commit to the vision of a company. And I'm like, well, that's man, we're screwed with engagement, because how are we going to emotionally commit when we're emotionally bankrupt? Right. And I think a lot of times these companies, and their leaders, they like, listen, we have a performance issue. We're not hitting our KPIs. We're not hitting our metrics. We're underperforming. And what they do is they like double down on this old way of doing things. I need you to give me more. Right. I'm going to use fear as a tactic, or I'm going to put the carrot out in front of you to try to get you to move forward. And listen, I don't care what you do when somebody's soul tired, when somebody is emotionally bankrupt, right? They don't have the bandwidth to take that next level to the next level. They don't have it. And so for me, it was like this moment of clarity for me, and also like very healing, because at that time in the NFL, like I always thought it was performance. I thought it was inadequacy. I thought that I didn't have what it takes. The truth is none of that's true. The truth is I had a capacity issue. Right? Because I didn't have the mental or the emotional capacity to emotionally commit to the level that I needed to commit to actually perform well. And so I say all of that because there's a good chance your team doesn't have a performance issue. There's a good chance that they have a capacity issue. And it's so important that you recognize this, because the solutions are different.
right? The solutions are different. And, you know, something that I say in my work, because all the work that I do, whether it's with, you know, on a stage at a keynote, or whether I'm working with a C-suite, or, you know, a bunch of mid-level managers, you know, what's become so real and apparent to me is the best leaders that I've had a chance to work with and to witness never ask the people that they are leading to give them more, ever. They always created the conditions where everyone had more to give. That's a capacity game. How do we unlock capacity? And unlocking capacity doesn't mean we're going to ask you to do more. Like, you know, the word resiliency, it obviously people are just like so exhausted with that word because it's been co-opted. It's been hijacked, right? Companies will bring resiliency trainers in, and then their people will go through resiliency training. And now what they're thinking is, oh, we can tell them to do more, and they can't talk about how bad it hurts because they're resilient now. Right? So nobody wants to hear about resiliency. And I actually came up against this with capacity. Nobody wanted to hear about capacity because they're like, if we unlock capacity, they're going to make us do more. Like, we don't want that. And I'm like, oh, I'm not communicating myself. Unlocking capacity is not about adding more to your plate. It's about strengthening the plate itself. And that's the big paradigm shift. So like when I say I didn't have a performance issue, I had a capacity issue. So it wasn't about how to perform better. It was about how do I unlock capacity? How do I expand within and create more mental and emotional bandwidth so that I have what I need to commit to the job in front of me, and I can do it excellently without losing myself in the process. Same outcome, two wildly different approaches.
Yeah, that's.
So the question really is, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. The question is how do we expand within? How do we create more capacity? Right? That's really the question. And I kind of already touched on it. You know, it starts with self-awareness, really recognizing the signal, right? And then there's a reframing the signal and then recentering the signal. Right. And then we can go into this more and more. It talks about, like, you know, I just released a newsletter today, actually, about New Year's resolution. And it's all about usually what are we going to attain? What are we going to change? What are we going to claim this new year? For me, the guiding question is, what needs to die so something new can live? Like, if you have a New Year's resolution, something has to die. Right? And that's the idea of capacity. What am I holding on to that needs to be let go of? Because whatever that is, it's taking up bandwidth. It's taking up space. Even if it's on the very, very, very edges of my psyche, it's still taking up bandwidth. And I need to free up that bandwidth to unlock capacity so that I can really show up the way that I'm capable of showing up.
Yeah. Yeah. Arthur Brooks, we talk about him a lot on the show. Love him. Social psychologist from Harvard. He talks about this idea of a reverse bucket list. So everybody who has a New Year's resolution is basically just a bucket list of what you want to accomplish, but you want to do it this year. And he talks about this idea of, you know, that's wanting more. And he has an equation for satisfaction. To be more satisfied, it is your haves divided by your wants. The more you have and the less you want, the more satisfied you will become. And it's easier to reduce the denominator, right? All you have to do is want less. And so he has this reverse bucket list where he writes down all the things that he currently has or the desires that he has, and he marks them off so that mentally he can say, I need to let go of this. And a lot of times it's not just stuff, right? Although that is a good thing to start to mark off: bigger house, more money, faster cars, whatever. But he also talks about things like political beliefs. Like, I need to maybe let go of my political beliefs a little bit more. And you're speaking to that now. What do I need to let go of? If I let go of maybe my strong beliefs on something, that will make room for more love in my heart, more relationships. Absolutely. And so
it can be as simple as, you know, I remember a few years back when I was living in Los Angeles, I had on a poster board of, like, basically, how do I create space? Because when you think about this, it's like, I'm somebody that strongly believes we can make our life happen, or we can participate with life, and we can receive life. A lot of high achievers, we know how to make our life happen. We don't actually really know how to receive what life is trying to bring our way. And there is a way of life that feels more effortless, not negating hard work, but it feels more effortless. It's almost like I am in partnership with the universe, and I'm opening up my heart. I'm putting myself out there, and just things are coming to me. But in order for us to receive, we have to have space to receive. You know, I've talk to so many people, and the first question I ask them is like, do you even have space for this type of success that you're longing for? Like, it would crush you. It would destroy your life. The very thing that you want would actually fracture your life. And that was my experience. I got to the NFL, and the next thing you know, the weight of success on a fractured heart, guess what? Always increases the fracture. So the weight of that success that you're trying to create, do you even have the bandwidth to carry it? And so I remember going through kind of this inventory of like, how do I create the bandwidth? How do I create the space? And one of the main questions that I had to answer all the time is, what am I avoiding in life? Simple question. Or what conversations am I avoiding? What debt collector am I avoiding? Like, what am I avoiding in life? Because that avoidance is eating up your bandwidth. It's eating up your capacity. So as much as it's, yes, a emotional game where we talk about expanding within and creating capacity by like digesting all of the repressed emotions that we're dealing with or harboring or holding on to, it's also an external game. There's external things that we can do. Something as simple as having that hard conversation with your spouse that you've been avoiding for months now, that frees up capacity. That we let that go. We let that die so that something new can live.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have a survey that I do on my website that it's 5 different things I measure. And one of those is capacity, because you're absolutely right. When you get to a certain level of your life, when you're younger or when you don't have as many responsibilities or whatever, yeah, you can add more to the plate. But at some point, it does become paramount that you recognize, I can't add more to the plate. There's only so much time. There's only so much energy. There's so many resources. So what can I add, and what can I let go of? And that's a huge part of this whole conversation is, what do I need to let go of, both in my inside and on the outside?
I mean, and when you look at nature, right? Nature is the only thing that never rushes, but always accomplishes. And the cycle that they always follow is a beautiful spring after a very hard winter. And if we want to live in more of that reality where everything gets accomplished, but we never rush, we have to look towards nature to show us, metaphorically speaking, what it's going to require. And that is always a death before new life. There's always a letting go. There's always a surrendering. There's always a trying softer before new life. And again, that's the deepening, right? That's the threshold. That's the liminal space between what was and what will be. And if we don't know how to hold that space, if we don't know how to navigate that space with intentionality, with awareness, what's going to happen is, because our nervous systems will always be spiraling in that space until we learn how to befriend it, we'll always go back to that which was familiar. We'll always resort back to that which we know to be true, which has worked for us once, but it's not necessarily conducive to getting us to where we want to be.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. I want to touch on a little bit kind of some of the things that you have going on for you that have helped you in this space. So we talk a lot about like, what do high achievers do that help them succeed, and what do they feel like they're doing well? And then I also on my show like to say, what are we working on? So what are we focusing on? So I want to start with the latter for you, because we're talking a little bit about this letting go.
Yeah.
As you think about what you're spending your time and energy on right now to help you in this space, what comes to mind?
Okay, just so that I understand your question properly, what am I working on right now personally?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, great question. I've been speaking, full time for 5 years now, and I feel like, I just turned 40, 5th year into speaking. I am just now getting started. And I've had a successful run these first 5 years. I've seen, doubling my income year after year, and it's going well. But there's a part of me that knows that I am just now tapping into my voice, and what that's requiring of me, and not just my voice. I feel like I'm going to use this word loosely because I grew up in Christian evangelical culture, and so this word is kind of thwarted in my world. But gifting, what is my real gifting that I bring to the table? And part of my gifting that I know is that for people who have so overly identified with the wounded masculine, the need to prove, the need to achieve, the need to win, right? There's that wounded masculine that's driving their ambition and also their success, and therefore determining the quality of their success and their ability to actually enjoy it. If they have so overly identified with the wounded masculine, their work, their next tier or their next season of growth is getting in touch with the feminine, right? The letting go, the surrendering, the trying softer, the being still. Like those are all the qualities that really didn't have a place at the seat of our heart, because they are not celebrated in our culture. Right. But the reason that they're important is because this is how we experience masculine and feminine, yin and yang, expansion and contraction. Like this is how we experience a whole person's success. This is how we experience a more embodied success that doesn't come at the cost of something else. And so for me to be able to help participate and or to help facilitate that work, what I'm leaning into is not relying on the perfection of my words or the perfection of me or like the need for me to have all of the answers, but more so holding the tension of the unknown so that the person that I'm working with can have their own experience that they're supposed to have. And does that make sense when I say that? And so it's basically, how do I get out of my own way? Because if me and you were working together, I would carry the responsibility of creating the transformation for you, right? If I was a coach and you came to me to ask for help, I would carry the responsibility of creating the transformation, and I could create some transformation for you. But I think that transformation would pale in comparison if I let the muses or the universe write that transformation for you. And I got out of the way. I held the safety of the room. I held the tension of the unknown so that you can embark on your own journey and create and find the transformation that's right for you. That's where things really fucking change. Like that's where we see massive transformations happen. And so I think that the growth that I'm leaning into is just getting out of my own way. And subsequently, like on a stage, for up until now, I've relied on the perfection of my sentence structure to create the change in people, not the weight of my being. Not the essence, right? I've relied on the perfection of my words and not the essence of who Caleb Campbell really is. And that's a vulnerable shift, right? I still go on stage and I still deliver a keynote, but from the place it comes from is radically different. And that's a really vulnerable shift because it's like, what if the muses don't show up? Right? I'm like kind of hanging myself out there, but that's where my growth is. So I'm saying yes to it. What's that cost? Everything. I could bomb and not get, booked again or whatever it is. But I also know the growth there is unmatched if I'm willing to say yes to it. So I'm leaning into that vulnerability of really, really relying on the essence of who I am, the weight of my being over the perfection of my words and needing to have all the answers for my clients. And I've already seen, the magic that can take place when I say yes to this journey. And it's special. Yeah. It's really special.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the things I have as well as a coach, I've been coaching for, 14 years now, in some capacity. And what I'm finding more every single year, because I still have to let go, because I too have that sensation of I need to be the one that helps them on their journey. I need to guide them. I'm the guide. They're expecting these things of me. But the more and more I work as a coach, the more and more I realize I don't actually have the answers. My job is to help them. My job is to help them find the answers within themselves. They already have them. Yep, I'm just helping to get them out.
It's the Rilke poem, It's like, what does he say? Don't look for the answers now because you're not ready to live the answers. Instead, live the questions. Yeah. And then sometime as you live in the tension of the unanswered question, one day down the road, you'll wake up and realize that you have already had the answer and you will become the answer. And so like these containers, and like I'm saying to anyone that's listening, if the coach that you're about to hire says he has the answer or says she has the answers for you, red flag, right? Because the answer, you are the answer, goddammit. You are the answer. And the point is that it's buried in there. And so you're going to hold the tension of the unknown so that the unraveling can take place in a safe container and you can experience the transformation. One of my favorite comedians is Pete Holmes. And he says, my God, what does he say? He says, do you know Pete? Yeah. He says, we're a beggar sitting on a treasure chest full of gold coins and we're asking for spare change. Like, we don't know the worth that's already in us, right? Because we're too busy looking outside of us. And there has to come a time where we do this work of deepening, right? It's not about doing more. It's about resisting less. It's not about external pursuits. It's about an internal deepening.
Yeah, yeah. I read up on different spiritual practices because I'm very interested. I'm not very religious, but I am pretty spiritual. And in my world, the idea of spirituality is just your pursuit of transcendence, right? To recognize that you are not the center of the universe and that you are a part of something bigger. And so I read up on Buddhism a lot. And Buddhism, everybody likes this idea of becoming enlightened, right? That's what the Buddhist was. Is he was the first person to become enlightened. And one of the things it teaches you is to become enlightened, you are already an enlightened being. You just haven't recognized it yet. And until you've recognized it, you aren't enlightened. And the moment that you think you are enlightened or you're pursuing enlightenment, that's not enlightenment. And you can only unlock it once you just realize that you already are. And so I think there's so many different aspects coming together in terms of that. That
I think like there's a sect of Buddhism that would say like the last step into becoming enlightened is giving up your pursuit of enlightenment because you already are. And that's such a like, I mean, we can like draw so much wisdom from that in our pursuit of success, right? Like this need to be successful. When you can give up your pursuit of success and your need to be successful, you're tapping into something. Right. And then this is Eckhart Tolle, he says that the ego never wants to have, it always wants to want. And that wanting more, that wanting to do, that wanting to be, that wanting to achieve. When we realize, that's the language of the ego. And ego is not bad. That's not like I got to fix this. I got to kill this thing. No, your ego is in a lot of ways, it's the early adaptations that keep the little boy or the little girl in you safe. Right. And so to give up that need to want something, that's a very vulnerable place, because then what you're saying is that we actually have to go inward and see that we are already everything that we wanted to be, but it's just buried under layers and mounds of pain and betrayal and abandonment that we have to go back and befriend and kiss with, and to meet with self-compassion and to begin to heal. Like, that's deathly terrifying. And so obviously our ego is going to play this game of constantly wanting. And that goes back to Buddhism, the hungry ghost, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. So we went really deep, and I love that so much. But to come out of it just a little bit as we start to near the end, I'd like to touch a little bit on this idea. So obviously we're talking about this idea. Almost the entire talk that we've had today has been centered around this idea of letting go, of not trying so hard, of maybe recognizing that success can look different than the striving that we have always done. But we've also hinted at and touched on this idea of like, you can still want things, you can still aspire to more, you can still pursue. And you are obviously still someone who is a high achiever, even though you've started on this journey and are continuing on it. So I'd like to hear a little bit more in terms of the things that you are doing or have done and found success in that have allowed you to perform at a high level. And that could be, you could take that any way you want. Obviously there's physical pursuits and practices, there's mental practices. There's a lot of different things that people can do. So I'll leave it to you to share what you feel you are currently doing or have done that have allowed you to maintain the level of performance that you've wanted to.
Yeah, I think, my gosh, I'll probably ramble here for a second.
Please.
I think for me, a big shift for me, and I understand that not everybody has a luxury of this maybe, but I think we can all find our way back to this place, is I stopped doing what I think I'm supposed to do or should be doing. And I started to find play, and I started to follow curiosity. Like what feels good today? Like some days I'll come down here and I know that I still need to set up the whole, marketing campaign for my new group container, and I want to go fly my drone. I'll go fly my drone. The work still has to get done, but there's something about like following play and finding that moment of bliss that unlocks capacity, right? That allows me to return back with a smile, and my work never feels like a duty as a result of it. My work never feels like an obligation that I have to perform so that I could sustain my level of life. That's a prison that I have fought long and hard to crawl out of. And let me tell you, when I realized that I had been holding the key that unlocks that prison door, everything changed, right? And so I think there's an element of following joy, following play, following desire. Very vulnerable. Walking away from the things I should be doing or I think I'm supposed to be doing to make enough money to sustain my quality of life. It's a very vulnerable place to be in. But what that's done for me is it's allowed me to be in a deeper relationship of trust with the universe, with this thing that is beyond me, to realize that the center will still hold when I go and follow. I'm actually going to be rewarded if I go follow play, because the universe will never be whole if you are not whole. And there's something about this personal responsibility of me pursuing my wholeness and calling that success, even though it looks radically different from how I once defined success. And so there's something about just following play, following joy. And on top of that, I would say, anything that is asking me to leave myself or to leave me, I'm saying no to. So refusing to betray myself is a big one. I cannot expect to live a happy, prosperous, successful life when I'm living it at the expense of myself, at what I want to say, who I want to become. And so that sometimes it really plays out in like my people pleasing tendencies. But like when it's a no, it's a no. And that's hard, right? Because we're really setting hard boundaries in our lives. But I betrayed myself for far too long. And there is no way that you can love your life while hating who you are. It's just impossible. Along with following joy and then also letting go of self-betrayal, and obviously living more in a line like that, the mantra that I live by is, what is the teacher? What is the great teacher? Like, that's how I kind of live my life. And what I mean by that is, so I'm still a high achiever, right? I have a successful speaking business, but I'm only doing a fraction of where I want it to be. So I work hard. Shit doesn't go as planned, as we all know, right? I sit down and I'm dealing with immense imposter syndrome. I'm dealing with a crippling fear of not being enough, of disappointing my clients, right? I'm stressed out. I told you before we got on this call, my 3-year-old is upstairs having a stage 5 meltdown. And I'm stressed and I'm trying to center myself as I'm getting on this call. I could see all of these things, the fear, the stress, whatever it might be, as an obstacle in the way. But no. This is my teacher. Can I be present with it enough? Can I befriend it? Can I be curious around it to see what it's mirroring back to me? What's it trying to tell me? What's it trying to show me? And I think this has been paramount for me because I've realized that we're playing 2 games simultaneously. We are all playing this game of external pursuits, and we play it well. But we play it at the expense of our internal deepening, our internal wholeness. And so I started to realize that what is the great teacher. And as I am just realizing that the fear, the insecurity, the pressure, the stress, the overwhelm, whatever it might be, it's happening for me. That's the teacher. That's the lesson. Like, what's it mirroring back to me? That's how I balance this external pursuit with this internal deepening. And as you internal deepening, what you're doing is you're creating deeper capacity. You're expanding your threshold. You're expanding within that allows you to not only hold and sustain the pace that you are running and the success that you are creating, but it actually creates the bandwidth needed for you to emotionally connect and commit so that you can step into the next evolution of success for your life without burning out. It happens naturally and effortlessly if you can learn how to play 2 games simultaneously. And I'm in that dance all the time. Right? I'm in that dance all the time. I'm paying attention to the insecurities that are surfacing as I'm writing the sales page for this new group container that I'm launching, right? This new one-on-one coaching that I'm launching. I'm paying attention to the fear that surfaces when money got a little tight this month because, well, holidays and I like nice things. Okay. But I'm paying attention to, like, making more money isn't the answer necessarily. The fear behind not making enough money, that's the internal deepening. That's the internal growth that I want to allow myself to be present with as I am now hustling to seek more external speaking engagements. Does that make sense? Yeah. And so I think these few things have been monumental in my transformation and really kind of how I approach my life now, that has allowed me, and I genuinely mean this when I say it, to love the life that I've created. And more importantly, to love who I have become in the process. And I am telling you, it's taken me a lot of fucking work to be able to say that with just complete conviction and complete honesty, where my success, it doesn't feel like a burden to carry. It feels like a dance to enjoy, to witness, to experience, to participate in. And that has made all the difference.
I'm so happy for you, brother.
Thank you.
Good for you. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's awesome. So I think so many people like myself are going to be listening to this and nodding their head and going, huh, wow. He is speaking directly to me. And so obviously they're going to want to learn more. Where do they go? Where do they learn more about you and what you're talking about?
Yeah. Find me on my website, calebcampbell.me, M as in Mike, E as in Echo. Some C-list actor out there in LA has calebcampbell.com and he won't give it to me.
Yep.
So calebcampbell.me, or you can find me on Instagram or LinkedIn, and I'll let you just put those links in the show notes. But calebcampbell.me, send me a message on my contact form, and I will get back to you.
Absolutely. That's awesome, brother. Hey, I appreciate everything that you're talking about, everything that you're doing for us high achievers to continue to redefine success and what it means for themselves and who they are.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for being here. I love that concept that Caleb shared about not betraying himself and this idea of leaning more into the things that he loves. And so he doesn't have to give away all of his energy and all those things to things that are not serving him. So hope you guys really enjoyed this episode. I know that I did, learning a little bit more about what somebody who has gone to literally the pinnacle of his sport and also done all of these other truly amazing things has taken this journey to a new place of redefining what success can truly look like without losing that edge. So I hope you loved this episode. If you did, make sure that you're definitely subscribing over on our YouTube channel, listening to the podcast and subscribing wherever you listen, whether that's Spotify, whether that's Apple Podcasts. And if you are ready to take that next leap, make sure you're checking out Caleb Campbell and his work that he does, or giving us a listen, giving us a look as we continue to help high achievers who are feeling stuck and stressed when they realize all their hard work still hasn't built them the life that they want. Go over to nextbetter.com and check us out. Looking forward to it.